Hello and welcome. I just finished Trails from Zero and I'm very excited to talk about it, but a couple things I've got to get out of the way first. My breathing may be a little bit more rough in this video. I'm going to look a little bit more rough, so please keep that in mind, and I do apologize. I'm recovering from COVID. I've had it for about a week now and I'm getting better, but it definitely will affect this video, so I wanted to state that at the start. All that out of the way, though, let's talk about Trails from Zero. I may have to edit out some coughs, but if you see any harsh cuts, that's why. Trails from Zero, the fourth game in the series. I have been playing the Geofront translation, and it's very, very good. I'm going to wait for Trails to Azure for the Geofront version because of how good the Geofront version of Trails Zero is. It is crazy just how good of a translation this is. There's every once in a while I'll notice a small hitch, but honestly, every once in a while there was a small hitch in the Trails in the Sky series as well. So the Geofront team has done an incredible job with this patch. This is a great game, and it's tough for me to figure out how I want to start this because Crossbell is very different from Liberl, whereas with the Sky games, you kind of had, well, the first two at least, you kind of had this big open world that you were slowly traveling through and doing tasks in each area and helping people in each area. In Crossbell, it's the city, right? And because it's focused in a little bit more, yes, I feel like I loved the previous game's world. Liberl is incredible, and to the fact where I got a Bracer Guild Liberl branch shirt. Um, Liberl is incredible, but there's something to the smallness of Crossbell that really sells it. By the end of the game, I knew where everything in that city was. I knew how to get from one end of the city to the other easily, not even including the fast travel, which is incredible. Um, Belgard Gate, uh, Armorica Village, just over and over again, all of these locations that I spent a lot of time with because the game world is relatively small. And I feel like that could be a complaint by some people, but it's very dense. There's a lot going on in Crossbell, which I think is really cool. Um, I think that starting off immediately with all four characters is really, really good. And I'll get into characters a little bit when we get into spoilers. Um, but having your full party right at the beginning, basically, that gives you time to get to know all four of them, is really, really cool. I like that a lot. I think whereas with the first games, it was Estelle and Joshua, and then we would pick up people as we went. With Zero, you have all four right away. You get to know them, you get to spend a little bit of time with them, and they're all meeting each other for the first time as well. So we get introductions not just to each other but also to us, which I think is really cool. I think the Geofront as an original dungeon, like the first dungeon, is pretty interesting. I have all my notes here, and I'm going down the list of them. And once we get through some of the generalities, we're going to get into characters and into story spoilers and everything. Um, I think that the new menus look really nice. The rolling menu, it's really cool. I think that the man just the like level of detail of improvement in the graphics. I'm not even somebody who like has to have great graphics. I love the way first and second chapter and third chapter look, for instance. But the moving forward of technology is really cool to see as I go through this series, and getting to see the new crafts and the way that arts look now, and the voiced lines when people use their crafts, which is really cool. There's also voice lines every once in a while throughout the story. I kind of wish there was more of those, but at the same time, I think the ones that we get are really, really good. Um, what other like little small things? I think the music in Zero is really, really good. The Armorica Village theme, the Geofront theme, the final dungeon theme, the city theme itself. There's some incredible theme music in this game. But I do think the Armorica Village theme is like top tier. That is such a good song. Um, these games so far have all had really good soundtracks, but I think this one might be my favorite. I think that second chapter has a really great soundtrack as well, and previously was my favorite. But I do think that there's just something so homey about the Armorica Village theme that I just cannot get over. As soon as I heard that song, I was like, man, I could live here. I could live with this song, you know? Such a great theme. Last couple little things. I think the enigmas are a really cool way to move forward. To have phones in this universe, I think that's really great. I think that it cost a lot of Sepith to get all of your slots open on your main 4, but it makes it really feel like an achievement by the end of the game. I did almost all of the support requests. I only failed one because I couldn't get all the peculiar recipes. And I'm sure I missed out on some hidden ones, though I definitely found a couple. But I feel like I did a lot of stuff, and I didn't really grind, but I fought a lot of enemies, and I still barely had enough Sepith by the end of the game to unlock everybody's slots, which is really interesting, but definitely paid for itself by the end of the game, where I was casting some extremely expensive arts with Tio and still had plenty of EP to work with. So let's get into story, and this is where we're going to cut spoilers in. There will be spoilers from here on out, so please remember that. If you are looking to play this game, you can come back to this video after you've completed it, but I 100% think it's worth playing for a lot of reasons that I'm going to get into, including wrapping up some loose ends from the Sky series. Definitely 100% worth playing. Check it out. This is probably my second favorite game in the series so far. Granted, I've only played 4 of them, but let's move on into story, and then we'll wrap this video up at the end with the plan moving forward. So, story-wise, the story of this game starts really slow, kind of like first chapter. There's a lot of moving parts and a lot of things you need to know. You need to find out about the corruption going on in Crossbell. You need to find out about the ties that the police department has to Revash, to the Speaker, to Speaker Hartman, and to the Diet members, and to the Calvardian Republic, and the Erebonian Empire, and everything going on there. It takes a while to get that stage set. But once that stage is set, Crossbell's politics wind up being incredibly interesting for me. I think that everything about the way everything ties in together and how you slowly pull strings until you start unraveling everything is really cool. And I think where this game goes is absolutely incredible. But let's talk characters. Lloyd Bannings. Lloyd he's got the tough job, right? You got to follow up after Estelle and Kevin, which is not easy. Kevin Graham, I said this on Twitter at the time, but Kevin Graham resonated with me really hard. And Estelle is now my favorite RPG protagonist. So Lloyd had a tough act to follow, right? And I think that he does a really good job. I don't like him as much as I like Estelle, and I think to a point I might still like Kevin more as well, but Lloyd is a really good character. He's got a lot on his plate. He's trying to figure out how to follow in the footsteps of his brother. He's trying to figure out who killed his brother. And he's trying to lead a group of misfits to be able to solve problems in a city where his hands are constantly tied. I think that makes for a really interesting main character, and yet throughout it all, Lloyd is the optimist. Lloyd is the one going, hey, if we can't tackle this problem in its entirety, let's tackle the bits that we can. Let's do what we can so that we can overcome all of these challenges. After Lloyd, we have Ellie Mcdowell. Ellie is a really good character as well. I think that at the start, she seemed kind of one note to me, but over time, she definitely opened up. We got to learn more about her own struggles, about her issues with Crossbell, and what Crossbell as a city has cost her. But her desire to still fight to help save Crossbell, despite all that, to face down these barriers that are in their way and how to overcome them, I think is really, really good. I like Ellie a lot, and I really like the romance that is kind of building. And that could be, I noticed that there were achievements in here, and I got an achievement for choosing Ellie to go to the auction with me, and we'll talk about the auction in a little bit. So that could be just a my playthrough kind of thing. I don't know. But I thought that was really interesting, the way that they slowly built up to that. There was definitely something clear early on, and then it started to build and grow, even though Lloyd is incredibly dense. Tio Plato. Tio is great. Tio Plato. Tio is great. I think that Tio is a great addition to the team. She's a little bit younger than everybody else, so she's having to try and deal with all of that, being treated as a kid while also dealing with an incredibly messed up past that ties into Ren's in a really cool way. Um, it's really interesting to me the way that Tio grows over this game, because she starts out kind of moody, kind of a loner, right? Which I guess you could say all four of them were in their own rights, though very different in the way they approached it. And then by the end of the game, she's firmly a member of the team. She has accepted the fact that, hey, she may be carrying this terrible past, but that everybody struggles with something. And that in that, together, the team can come together. And I think that's really good. And then finally, Randy Orlando. Um, Randy's great. At first, he's just the womanizer, right? But then you find out that he's also carrying a pretty troubled past. That he's got all these things going on with his dad and with what appears to be maybe a stigma. And he's just doing his best to try and have a good time and not be classified by who he used to be, right? He's a great member of the team. There's definitely more to his story that we haven't heard yet, but I do think that it comes together really well for the team in Zero. A couple other side characters that wind up being really important. We have Wazy Hemisphere, the leader of the Testaments, which is a gang in the downtown district. Wazy, oh, that's a name, right? Really cool character. A lot going on there, and I definitely don't feel like we know everything yet, but Wazy and Wald Wales, are both really interesting. There's a lot going on there. I think that Wazy is probably the more interesting one to me because Wazy has ties into the black market and everything because of his escort business. There's definitely more to learn about Wazy, but I do think that what we get in this game is really good. And Wazy is just like hitting on Lloyd, hitting on Ellie, hitting on anybody. Wazy doesn't care. Wazy's just here to have a good time, I guess. And that definitely endeared me to him in a really cool way because he's just like, hey, let's go. Let's fight. Let's date. Whatever. I don't care. Let's go. Which is really fun. It's just like when I picture the gang leaders, when I heard there were two of them, my first thought was like, okay, so we're going to have the violent one, red Oni, blue Oni, right? Violent one, smart one. And in a lot of ways, Wald is red Oni, but Wazy is not just blue Oni, right? There's definitely more to his character, and I think it's really cool. Dudley as the First Division's ace. Dudley's a really interesting character. At first, I thought that Dudley was going to wind up being a villain, but by the end of the game, Dudley has definitely proved himself. He's got a lot of pride, and that pride comes from the fact that he is having to deal with the most pressure from above because he knows the police chief is corrupt, and there's nothing he can do about it. It makes sense that he would be really upset and really aggravated, right? But over the course of the game, he opens up to the special support section and winds up becoming a really, really powerful ally. He and Sergey get some incredible moments in that last chapter, which we'll talk about in just a little bit. Grace was pretty cool. I don't like her as much as I like Niall. I think there's something special about Niall, but I do think that Grace is really good. By the end of the game, she also has proven her place. Who else do we got to talk about? Sergey, I guess. Sergey's great. Older police chief that is just tired of it all and just wants to make the world better. Wants to make his city less corrupt. Zeit is really great. Zaito is incredible. Kia is great. I love Kia so much. I just wanted her to be happy. And, spoilers, since we're in spoilers, by the end of the game, she absolutely is. I feel like the next game might rob us of that, but by the end of this game, she absolutely was. Ren, Joshua, and Estelle make a return here, and I'll talk about that scene a little bit later when I get to talking about the ending, because that scene absolutely made me cry. And then Arios McLean is probably the last big, I guess we got to talk about Yin too, but we can talk about Yin when we talk about Arc NCL. Arios McLean is definitely an interesting character. I think that they were just on the verge of pushing him too hard, right? Of making him too much a Cassius Bright. But I think it's helped a lot by the fact that he himself says, I'm not as good as Cassius. I'm not ready to be S rank yet. Which I think helps a lot. It makes sense, too, that the Bracer Guild would be like, hey, no, we need an S rank. We're going to move you up. And he's just like, nah, I don't know about that. Because, like, obviously he's talked about in a lot of the same way Cassius is, but whereas Cassius is like, yeah, I can do it, no problem. Arios is like, well, we'll work together, we'll get it done. And that's not to say that Cassius is like more cocky, because he's not. It's just that Cassius is an S rank, right? And Arios is not. And I think they were so close to pushing him too far, but they didn't, right? I think he rides just on the right side of that line in a really cool way. So now that we talk characters a little bit, let's talk story. Early chapters, again, kind of slow. Getting into the swing of things, you got cases to solve, you got to deal with the Testaments and the Saber Vipers, trying to resolve the conflicts there. That's all well and good, right? World building, set the stage. The stuff with the Hayworths that follows is really good because, again, from our perspective, we know that at some point the Hayworths gave up their child, right? That's what we knew from the first game. They gave up Ren. We get the full story here, and it's really tragic. But our characters don't know that, and so they trust Mr. Hayworth completely. I was shocked. I was floored when Mr. Hayworth came on screen. And then to follow that up with the moment where Estelle and Joshua show up, I shouted. I was so excited when they show up to help the special support section. Then when you get to see Ren again, I lost my mind again because it finally hit me that, hey, this is going to be a subplot the entire rest of this game. Because if Joshua and Estelle are here, they're going to try and find Ren. And the way that the story continues to loop and change and grow as each character gets to know each other more, and the special support section does wind up really helping out Estelle and Joshua and really helping out Ren in a really cool way, I think that it comes together to be, I wouldn't even say like a perfect sequel. It's more like the story is continuing, and now we have our next step into Crossbell. And the way that it's done, where we're stepping forward with these new characters, but we're also moving forward with plots that were left unfinished, is a great way for me as a fan to go, well, yeah, no, of course I love these characters. They helped Estelle and Joshua reconnect with Ren. It's like without even realizing it, you are becoming endeared to the new characters because of the way they're helping the old characters. Which is really cool. And it's done in a way without making Estelle or Joshua weak, without making Ren stupid. It's done in a way that sells everybody on their strong points while moving everybody's stories forward, which is incredible. I'm so incredibly happy I got into the series, and I cannot wait to see how this continues to develop and evolve as I get into Cold Steel. I also think it's really cool to see the special support sections takes on Joshua and Estelle. Because again, from their perspective, these two characters work together flawlessly. They have perfect coordination. Whereas from our perspective, we had to see them get there, right? They had to develop that. And that's really cool. Arc NCL. Arc NCL is really cool, and everything going on there is really interesting. I think that was a lot of fun at the time, for sure, solving all those problems with Yen. I do think that chapter maybe goes on a little too long. I guess it's even shorter than some of the later chapters, but those later chapter stories grabbed me way more. But I do think this stuff is really good, and the reveal at the end that Yen is Rishia Mao is like, all right. All that stuff, again, is still kind of setup, but it's setup that works, right? It's setup done in a good way, that it's still part of the story. Things are still growing and changing, but it isn't yet the big hammer falls that are going to hit later on. The stuff with the chase battle is all really cool with the Crossbell Anniversary Festival. That chapter also goes on for a long time, but because it's split up into days, it doesn't feel quite as rough. I think that chapter is a lot of fun, and were it not for the final chapter, probably would be my favorite chapter. The chase battle's great. I think that the stuff with Kilika is really cool. The stuff with Lecter is really cool. Getting to run around with Ren while we try to find Colin, that was a great section of the story. Ren saving Colin, even though she hates him, she thinks she hates him. Really, really good. The moment with her in the closet, while her parents tell the real story of how they didn't sell her, they didn't give her away, they gave her to someone they thought they could trust who got killed and Ren stolen. so that they could try to fix their gambling, or not gambling debts. Their kind of. He made some really shoddy investments, and had to pay them off. But getting to see that story and find out the Hayworths were just as much victims as everybody else, where before all we had was Ren looking at them happy with Colin. It's really, really powerful. It sells that story way more, and starts to put in the last bits that are needed for Joshua and Estelle to be able to reconnect with Ren. There's a great moment here, and I've taken screen caps of Estelle and Joshua talking to the special support section, and Estelle trying to figure out how she's supposed to do this. And then basically just says, well, with that out of the way, I'm going to catch you and make you a part of the Bright family for sure. And Joshua's response is just, there's nothing more terrifying than a wild Estelle caught up in the moment. And that would hit me really good. That was a great moment. Speaking of great moments, the auction. The auction was incredible. Getting to go around and finding everything going on, and then finding Kia, that great escape, having to fight your way through to get out, Lecter helping you out. There's a lot more to Lecter than we originally thought from Trails the Third, and I'm really excited to see more of him as we move forward, because now that I'm going to be going to Erebonia, I assume I'm going to see more of Lecter. Rescuing Kia, I immediately was like, yes, we have to protect Kia. We have to get her out of here. This child doesn't know what's going on. This child has not been a part of all this. We have to get her out of here. When Kia comes in with the new clothes and her intermission and smiles, it was immediate. Heaven and earth will move if need be to get this child safely wherever she needs to be. By the end of the game, wherever she needs to be is with the special support section, and I will not budge on that. I'm just so glad she's safe. It was really smart to endear this character to the player, and then to make her vital to the ending of the game, because obviously I wanted to protect her. Obviously I wanted to keep her safe, and that comes together really well towards the end of the game. A couple big things before we hit the ending. The longest day in Crossbell. That is such... Oh, Crossbell's Longest Day. Such a good title. Such a great chapter. I guess I should bring up Storming Revash & Co., because there's some good stuff in there too. You're working with Dudley. The parties come together with him, and it's really cool. There's some cool puzzles in there. But I just want to talk about Crossbell's Longest Day, about the longest day in Crossbell. The final chapter of this game is probably the most any final chapter of any game has ever unraveled in the best way. At the start of this chapter, you're trying to piece everything together. You know that Joachim, the doctor that you had originally brought Kia to see, is looking into the drugs, trying to figure out what's going on there. You've got all of a sudden everything just falling apart. You've got the raid on the hospital as you try to solve all that. You've got the Ravash stuff going on. And then all of a sudden the SSS gets attacked. And you have to escape from there. Incredible cutscenes as you're running from there, trying to get away, trying to get to different places. You wind up taking cover in the IBC. You have a little bit of downtime there, which is where we get an incredible scene between Lloyd and Ellie. And then from there, it's just go, 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 go. It's the scene in the car where there's just so much to talk about. You've got Shizuku with you. You've got Kia with you. Sergei gets shot. It's just so good. There's so much going on. It's just a great rush through all of these events. And I was absolutely captivated. I could not put my controller down. I could not stop paying attention. So good. It's hard to put into words why it's so powerful, but every part of that chapter hits so hard. You've got moments over and over again where it looks like everything's going to fall apart, right? Cecile about to be attacked, and you rescue her. You've got the moment where you're on the bridge and Sergei and Dudley have stayed behind to hold off the enemy, and there's no way that you can get out. But then Dieter Kreuss comes driving in his car in a really cool scene. You've got Sergei being shot and trying to hold it together, and then Noelle Seeker comes out of nowhere to rescue her with her car, to rescue you with her car, which also doesn't have guns on it, so she could have just easily been killed. You have your party desperately trying to get to Joachim Gunter to stop him so that the rest of Crossbell can know peace, because this drug has taken over and everybody that's been infected with it is under Joachim's control. It's such a cool chapter. You have Arios McLean getting a cool moment. You have the entire SSS getting a cool moment where they have to try and defuse those bombs so that the IBC's front gate doesn't get destroyed. It might be my favorite final chapter in a game. I still think that the chapter where you go around all of Liberl, solving all the problems, is probably my favorite chapter in the series. But Crossbell's Longest Day is an incredible final chapter. The final dungeon is good. It might be my favorite final dungeon in this series. It's still a little longer than I want it to be. I think there's something about we're at the end of the game and I want to see the ending that makes these dungeons feel longer to me. But I do think it's a really well done dungeon. The fact that the terrain changes drastically as you go, as you get through the lab sections, and then you get down into the area that looks very similar to Gehenna, which is definitely not an accident, from the third game. Very, very good final chapter. The Sun Fort, I think is what it's called. The fight with Joachim is really good. I think that it's very, very solid. I think that the fight from third is probably my favorite final boss fight still. But the fight with Joachim is really good. He's got some really cool attacks. He's able to do multiple big magic attacks in a row after he's done charging up, and you can't impede it. So instead, it becomes more important to prepare for it and make sure that you're healed up and ready to go. Make sure that you have Tio's guard up so that you're able to take the attacks. By this point in the game, you have a lot of resources to be able to use, and I think the game does a really good job of getting you ready for this final boss, even if he does have a lot of health. That said, the moments after the final boss are way more impactful for me. The moment, don't cry, the moment where Patter Matter, I keep wanting to call it Pater Mater, but she calls it Patter Matter in 3. The moment where Patter Matter sets Rin down so that Estelle and Joshua can talk to her and connect with her, and Estelle can grab her and say, "Fought you." That got me. That got me so good. Rin leaves with him. She's going back to Liberl with him. They're going to be a family. And at that point, look, Joachim Gunter, get out of here. I don't care about you anymore, man. You were a good villain. Your cult stuff was really interesting and cool, and there was a lot going on there, and a lot more questions I still have that need to be answered. But look, I'm just happy that Rin's okay. I do still really want to know more about this cult, though, and I assume that we'll learn more about D, therefore G, throughout the next game, because it's intrinsically tied into Guy and into Lloyd's story now in a way that I expect means we'll hear more about it. But the picture afterwards is really great. Again, getting to see like the 3D effects step up in the series is really good. Getting all the characters together that were a part of all this. And then finally, the goodbye as Kia is about to go to school for the first time, and as the rest of the special support section does a little wave or smiles for the camera. It's really good. It's really good. I like these characters a lot. I like this game a lot. I really want to play Azure, but I will wait for the Geofront translation because I want it to be to this quality. I'm sure there's a lot that I missed playing this throughout my time with COVID. I definitely got sleepy at parts because of the medication that I've been taking, and forgot to take notes on things, I am sure. But absolutely, this game is worth playing. Trails from Zero is incredible. One thing I lost to Joachim Gunter catching fish, and I was kind of wishing there would be a line here of just like, hey, guess who caught the big one this time? But at the same time, everybody had a lot going on, There was a lot happening. I get why they didn't. And also, like, Joachim dies. Whereas Weissman is killed by Kevin, and it's a really powerful moment. Joachim overdoses on the drugs, turns into like a demon, and then he deteriorates. He's gone. And because of that, I think there's a lot more of this mystery that hasn't been uncovered yet. Because otherwise, I feel like we would have brought him in and that would have been the end of it, right? But there's a lot more I want to know about that cult, D therefore G, and the stuff they were getting into. It's such a cool idea because, like I said earlier, I'm a big fan of cop dramas. And so I was excited for this game to begin with, but it's such a cool idea when we already know that the Septian Church is like a big thing in this world, to then go, well, of course there would be a group that denied the existence of Idios and wanted to have their own god. There's a lot more about Kia we haven't learned yet. I'm very excited to get into Azure. Obviously, I can't right now because I'm still waiting on the Geofront translation, but as soon as that's done, I'll go back to Azure, and I'm very excited to do so. So plans for the future. I'm going to go to Cold Steel 1 for now. I've been told that Cold Steel 1 takes place during Trails from Azure, so Cold Steel 1 should be safe for me, shouldn't spoil anything, and then hopefully by the time I finish Cold Steel 1, which I am told is a pretty long game, I can then, by that point, hopefully, the Geofront translation of Trails to Azure will be done. If not, I'll go into Cold Steel 2, and if I get things spoiled for me there from Azure, I do. That's just the way it is. But hopefully by then, Trails from Azure will be done. If by the time I finish Cold Steel 2, Trails to Azure is not finished yet, the translation, I will probably wait before starting Cold Steel 3, because I've been told that that is when it's full spoilers for the stuff that happens in the Sky Trilogy and the Crossbell Duology. So hopefully by then, the Geofront translation will be done, because I desperately want to know more about what's going on in this world, and these characters have won me over. Again, it was tough to follow the characters from Sky, right? But the characters in Crossbell definitely did it. The characters in Zero are really, really good. I really like these main four, and I think that they make a really good team. There was never a question of like in Sky, when you can mess around with your party, right? And you can change up the party members. It became a question of, okay, well, who am I bringing? Who's got what quartz? Who's going to cover what? But because we had just the main four here with some additions that you could add in, there was never a question of, will I have enough healing? Because I've got Ellie and Tio. There was never a question of, will I have enough shielding? Because I had put Earth Quartz on Lloyd, and I had put Tio in the team, of course, and Tio had her guard as well. There was never a question of if I'll have enough damage or status effects, because I had Randy there, and he had plenty. I think that the S-Crafts are really good. Death Scorpion, Rising Sun, Crimson Gale. The team-up crafts are really, really good. The one with Ellie and Lloyd, I think it's like Star something. I used that a lot, because that was very powerful. Did a lot of damage. It only cost 100. So if you had them both at 200, you could do it pretty much back-to-back in 2 battles and be good to go. Yeah, this gameplay-wise, it was great. Story-wise, it was great. Music-wise, it was incredible. Trails from Zero is definitely a hard recommendation for me. I'm very excited to get into Trails to Azure when that finishes. And honestly, I'm really excited to get into Trails of Cold Steel 1, because I've only heard good things about those games. And I can't wait to get into the rest of the story, Let me know your thoughts on Trails from Zero in the comment section down below. Until next time, I've been Trey. This has been The Full Spectrum. Remember to always enjoy the full spectrum of the Trails series and Trails from Zero specifically has to offer.